Everybody, and welcome back to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review any artist discography, songs, musical topics, really whatever comes to mind. This episode is going to be back again at the Album of the Year series, talking about the year 1967. Definitely when music started to turn away from the more fun, joyous pop into the darker psychedelic era, which, for my money, good change. Yeah, I think this year is a pretty solid step up from 66 and definitely the best that we've talked about so far. Just so much incredibly strong material across here, pop, rock, soul, just all across different styles. And for me, it's kind of hard to deny the incredible strength that lies in 67. Andrew, any thoughts?
It's a legit contender for my favorite music year. I think what it has is it kind of maintains the highs for me that had been building over the previous couple of years, and also adds some depth and variety. You have a lot of new artists coming on the scene here or coming into their own. So excited to talk about what this one has to offer. So I guess I'll kick things off. I'll give a couple runner-ups from here just because it's just getting that much more loaded. So we'll start with number 7 is Walk Away Renee, Pretty Ballerina by the Left Bank. Hidden gem in the Baroque pop NLs. And my number 6, just missing the cut, Are You Experience, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Probably go for the US track listing here. Brilliant psych rock. But actually making my top 5. And this is where I'll get to talk about the Rolling Stones, Between the Buttons. Probably an unconventional choice for this artist and certainly for this year in the general consensus. But there's something about the way that it's like a midpoint between their early days and the run they would soon go on that really works for me. There's blues, pop, folk, psychedelia, and it's more polished than some of their earlier stuff, but before they quite got into like a heavier grit. And I really like kind of that in between. There's a bunch of lovely sounds most casual Stones fans don't know. I've actually heard the UK version more, which omits the big singles. Has allowed me to appreciate kind of the deep cuts. But if you're counting the US, then you got Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together, the former of which is really high up on my favorite songs in general, so that only helps. My number 4 is The Velvet Underground and Nico. Definitely one of the more challenging, iconic records of its day, and I think they walked the line just right. I've always been drawn to kind of the balancing act between artistry, experimentation, while still maintaining accessibility. It does jam out a bit at times, but it's more something I can get lost in than it feels too indulgent for its own good for the most part. And elsewhere, you get these kind of pop songs that stand out as unique with this like layer of haze that's added to it. Never gets better for me than the opener Sunday Morning, but there's plenty of rewarding stuff throughout. Number 3, we'll go to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. To think 2 of the best songs from the sessions got pulled because of the single release, but it still works great. It's a loose concept, but sound-wise, I almost can't separate the tracks from the whole. Maybe the most recognized acclaimed album ever. And, well, I guess I don't get that far, having only 3rd for the year. I also don't feel it's overhyped. It's been a part of me for so long that I almost take it for granted sometimes, and quite a power move to close out an already strong album with something like A Day in the Life. So yeah, that's my number 3. My number 2 will go to Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. Not originally intended as a proper studio album, but I don't really care when the song lineup looks like this. You get the more psych pop coolness in the vein of Sgt. Pepper's, plus some absurdly great singles placed together to make an incredible soundtrack. At the moment, Strawberry Fields Forever might be my favorite song ever. So, can't really go wrong here. That second side is just loaded, one of the best album sides ever for me. But that still leaves my number 1, which is an artist you talked about already, Forever Changes by Love. I got this one blindly years ago based on a hunch, and it just kind of kept rising for me before becoming my favorite in what was already a competitive year. What really stands out here is just how delighted I am to hear almost anything from this when it comes on. It's kind of like this eclectic combination of folk, psychedelia, and Baroque pop. But it just grabs my attention and takes me on a journey each time. Alone Again Or is generally considered the highlight, like the consensus top song. And it's hard to argue with that, but I really love pretty much everything here. It's great.
Yeah, I was kicking myself there because I can't believe I forgot that one. I think I guessed literally your entire top 4 past that record. And that's a shame. Because I should have known that one. Oh well. 1967, really strong year. I have 3 records that just missed out for me. One that I kind of want to draw some attention to because I haven't heard anybody talk about it, and I loved it whenever I heard it, being Time and Charges by the Buckinghams. This is a really great sort of just straight up pop record, sort of blue-eyed soul. Absolutely love the vocal work across here, and I just think the songs are so much fun. If you have to pick one from here, I'd probably say Mercy, Mercy, Mercy was my favorite. Another album that just misses for me is going to be Songs of Leonard Cohen by Leonard Cohen. Really incredible folk record. Obviously, just Leonard Cohen is a master wordsmith. Songs like Suzanne, Winter Lady, Sisters of Mercy, So Long Marianne. Just a really beautiful album. Just really dark, really lovely acoustics and whatnot. Then my proper number 6 is going to be Procol Harum with their debut record. The version without Lighter Shade of Pale is the one that I know, but if it had Lighter Shade of Pale, it might have cracked into that top 5 because that song is so good. But despite that, this is just a really awesome blend of like psych rock, but you still have early Baroque pop influences. You have Gary Brooker, who's such a good vocalist, I feel like. BJ Wilson is a killer drummer. At this point, they're one of the strongest units as a band, I feel like, which is crazy because they're still on their debut. They did opener Conquistador, something Following Me. I think Mabel is delightful. There's tons of really great stuff on that record, just missing out because of the strength of this year. But my top 5, we share a good bit of these. I'm actually surprised at the one that we don't share because you didn't even bring it up. It's interesting. Number 5 for me, going to be Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. I mean, we spoke very strongly of it. It's a glorified greatest hits record, if we're being perfectly honest. Just filled with stuff like, I am blanking on the name of the song. I Am the Walrus. You have Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. My favorite on here, All You Need Is Love. Stuff like Fool on the Hill, title track. The only thing that kind of holds it back a bit for me is Flying. I just think it's slightly out of place. But past that, just a really fun and excellent record. One of the last times you'll hear me talk about the Beatles, sadly, at least in band form. Anyways, after that, I had Everything Yesterday by the Byrds. Really, whenever they started dabbling into Baroque pop, folk rock still, and it's just lovely. Harmonies just kept getting better and better, and the songwriting is up to the point of excellence by now. One of their best releases up to that point. Following there, I have the record that I don't believe you even brought up, which surprises me, being Something Else by the Kinks, which for my money, I like this a little bit more than their next record. For me, this is just a really, really excellent Baroque record. I think that Ray Davies is definitely at his forefront, being a great writer. You have songs like David Watts, Death of a Clown, Tin Soldier Man is excellent. Tea, and of course the beautiful closer being Waterloo Sunset. If I had to pick probably my second favorite song of this entire year, oh, honestly, maybe third, because number 2, a record that you talked about and that I said was my winner before, that number 2 being Between the Buttons by the Rolling Stones. So no double win for the Stones, but like I said, this is my favorite era of Stones, this being my favorite Rolling Stones album. I just think that they're able to beautifully blend in that sort of pop rock sound with psychedelic eras that's going on. Some people discredit sort of this and their Satanic Majesty's Request being kind of too Beatles adjacent for their realm, but this one I think definitely sticks out past them. Of course, at the start, Let's Spend the Night Together, Yesterday's Paper, Ruby Tuesday. Come on, how do you beat that? Ruby Tuesday, of course, being the greats in general. I think My Obsession is a really fun rocker as well. The only song that I really don't love on here is Miss Amanda Jones, but I still think that it serves the record quite well. And yeah, of Full Con Collected is one of my favorites in here as well. Just a really, really good record. But my number one is one that you talked about. It is going to be the Velvet Underground and Nico with the Velvet Underground and Nico. Really just the apex. This is the first album of the entire decade to get to 5 stars for me. I think it is just truly sensational front to back. As you mentioned before, Sunday Morning is a beautiful opener. Something that I think really sets this apart from their future releases is, of course, Nico, who I think is a brilliant foil to Lou Reed vocally. I think that they play off of each other really well. I like the contrasting voices and sort of subject matter on here. It's kind of fun. I'm Waiting for the Man is incredible. I absolutely adore Femme Fatale. My favorite track on here has to be the 7-minute track Heroin, which I think is just an absolute trip. Every time I hear it, I just get totally sucked into that song. And yeah, my apologies that I'm not picking, the fun sort of pop upbeat records. My bad, Aiden. But I think it's a really, really fun, really just incredible display of experimental rock within the 60s. And it really just pushed forward what music could become, I feel like. And there's still great songs I didn't talk about, like Run, Run, Run and I'll Be Your Mirror. 5 stars for the Velvet Underground and Nico, my album of the year for 1967.
I'm sure we'd be in the minority having Between the Buttons both in our top 5s, but kind of a cool connection there.
I mean, hey, it's right. So, I mean, good for us. Now, I feel like 60 Stones before Let It Bleed, I feel like it discredited too much. It's just being like a singles act. But I really do feel like sort of out of our heads to Beggar's Banquet might be my favorite run of records that they had. Which
I will say one thing that doesn't help them is just the different releases and not knowing which one is considered like the definitive version doesn't help.
That is an issue, especially whenever you also have some records that came out in one area, like Flowers or something. It's just like everything gets muddled in between. So,
but yeah, great year.
Absolutely.
Probably could have talked about another 10 and been happy with those too.
Oh yeah, so much good stuff this year for sure. When I think the 60s really started to open up and really started to convey what they are and what they could be. So yeah, that was our take on 1967. Plenty of great albums, plenty of great ones to discuss. That being said, say the incredible peaks that I was too dumb to bring up, and praise Andrew for loving that love record. Being said, I hope that you all have a great one.